Well, Kay, let's talk about the history of this building first. And I believe the cornerstone was put into the wall or the ground in November of 1927.
Yes, W.W. Hastings provided the inaugural address or the cornerstone laying, and we kind of used some of those words at the building rededication that we had this past October when the building was returned to the name of Bagley. But it's had a long history both at NSU and as part of Tahlequah Public in its long history.
Right, and the building was initially named for William C. Bagley, who was a dominant figure in education at Teachers College in Columbia University in New York and recognized all over the United States. That is correct, is that
Yes,
not?
He was a popular theorist at the time, probably not as necessarily well known now, but
no.
At the time, John Dewey, Bagley, it was considered a colleague, and all of his writings are now at Baylor University.
At Baylor in Texas. There.
And so he does have quite an extensive collection of writings, and many of our faculty and students are kind of going back and as part of our learning about where we've been in order to move forward into the second century, trying to read some of his papers. And
I understand from my readings historically about him that he didn't necessarily subscribe wholeheartedly to the progressive trend of the early era. He still was more into practical but defined
I think
education.
It was essentialism, and yes, was probably at the other end of the spectrum from John Dewey.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Bagley came into being because Northeastern had started as a normal school in the first decade of the 20th century, and high school interested students in Tahlequah came to the preparatory school here before Central High School was opened in 1923. So there's a long history, and of course the normal school's intent was to educate teachers.
Yes, and it grew out of actually the Cherokee Nation's seminaries to prepare young women and young men for teaching as well. So its history even predates Northeastern State University, but they had grown to the point where at one point everything, the administrative buildings, the classrooms and the dorms and everything were in Seminary Hall.
Right.
And by that time, by 1927, it had grown to the point where there were more specified buildings. And so, yes, this one's intent was to be an education building and to prepare teachers to carry on that tradition.
It was always a school of grades 1 through 12, and I recall that there was a primary department with a supervisor and an intermediate department with a supervisor. There was on the faculty a director of student training or practice teaching or intern teaching. And a director of the school, because we have those records.
Yes. Now we place our students in a 23-county area, but at that time, all teacher candidates did their student teaching here at the lab school site. It was ahead of its time in terms of being considered a professional development school, and my former secretary, Mary Jane Smith, went to first grade here in the building, and I know quite a few other faculty and people around town have attended school or processed through here during their teacher education preparation.
Well, as a student at Northeastern, I did my practice teaching here as an undergraduate before I went away to school. And this room that we're sitting in was the auditorium for the building. And the music classes were in this room, and there was a small stage in this room. And beginning with the time that I knew it as a demonstration school, Mr. Hackler was in charge, and then Luther Brown became the principal of the school. And you were talking about, first, there are a number of people in the community who were my students or who were here, and those students remember with great fondness the teachers who were in this building. So it's been a beacon. And interestingly enough, it was known as the more sedate of the two high schools when there were two high schools in Tahlequah. This school as a high school and Central. It was the sedate part. Well, we have to take a station break now, I think, and so we'll be right back.
Okay.